Being single is expensive. Hello and welcome to First Gen Money, a YouTube channel where we talk about all things navigating life as a first gen. I recently read an article that talked about the couple's privilege, right? The couple's privilege to save money and work towards our financial goals because you are coupled, and how the wealth gap between married and single people living in the US is growing. And it made me want to create a video on what areas in our lives we can focus on if we are single and not part of a couple, and can take advantage of splitting our costs, our bills. What can we do? What can we do if we're single? What areas in our life can we focus on? I came up with 4 different areas to kind of think about if this is you. Obviously, I am part of a couple. I'm not married, but I still have the couple privilege in that I split my rent with somebody. I split my grocery bills with somebody. I split all these things with people. I split them with my one person. Disclaimer that I am not talking about this from the lens of myself being a single Latina person. So I just want to put that out there. But the 4 areas to consider are: increase your income. Number 1, increase your income. We know that if you make more and you spend less, you have more that you can save. So how do you increase your income? How do you even start? Number 1, you can ask for a raise at your current employer if it's been a while since you got a raise, or if you got a 3% raise, like, it's time to ask for a raise, and not being, shy about the repercussions of it. Because as Latinas, as Black women, Native American women, we're experiencing big pay gaps. Latinas make 54 cents to every white man's dollar. Black women make 58 cents to every white man's dollar. And Native American women make 51 cents to every white man's dollar. So there is a pay gap. There is a pay gap. And it took me a while to not be embarrassed or feel guilty asking for more money, asking for more when I was kind of shared the raise that I was getting. And there's a lot of guilt. I should be happy with what I have that we have to work through. But keeping that in mind helps us understand why it is important that we start first by asking for a raise where we are. The second thing you can do is obviously look for another job. Maybe you're interested in switching fields. So what skills can you learn to get you in a position to be at a place to look for another job in a different role? Or if you're just looking for another job in your same role, then obviously you don't have to work on your skills. People grow their incomes when they switch jobs, not when they're loyal to employers. I have been fortunate in that my time at my past employer, I did get great salary increases, but that's not common. Understanding that you can probably make and give yourself a raise by going to a different employer. Number 3, you can make more money by starting a side hustle. I feel weird about saying this one because I know that not everybody has the time or wants to start something on the side. So this is putting a disclaimer that it's not for everybody, right? Not everybody wants to work more. And that's not the solution, right? We don't want to work more because we are underpaid. That's usually what ends up happening. I say that one because it is not going to be available for everybody. And so how can you tap into the first 2, the asking for a raise, the switching jobs, before you have to get to the point where it's like, okay, now I just need to work more to be able to save more because I'm still spending the little amount that I can. That's increase your income. Next, we're gonna go into growing your network. This is important for everybody, obviously, but growing your network, especially when you're looking for a job or if you're looking to pivot to something totally different, it matters, right? People can refer you to their employers. People can give you tips about the industry you're interested in. But it also helps to know people in a space that you want to break into, just so you understand how people talk about what it is that their industry terms are. But the other aspect of growing your network is growing the amount of people that you have, the community that you have around you, right? It's less about the work stuff and more about the community stuff. If I grow my network of the people in my neighborhood, I have more access to things if I need help when I need help. And that's not to say that you're expecting people to give you free things. Once we grow our community, people want to help us out. And that's what our community is for. Growing your network of people is gonna be crucial. You want to be able to have a good support system. The next one is lowering your expenses. First of all, I think increasing your income is the most important one, but this one is by far just as important. I think they all are. But lowering your expenses goes a long way. A Zillow report did a survey and they noticed that single people are paying a renter's tax for being single, and it's costing them almost $7,000 more. Housing is just one aspect of this, but housing is a big one because we know housing is one of our top 3 expenses. So how can we lower our housing costs? Obviously, I can lower my housing costs because I have somebody to split the rent with. But if I am looking to live alone, like, is it that I look in a different part of the place I'm living, in a different area, maybe further outside from the city? Am I looking at a smaller space? Like, we're gonna need to make compromises about what we wanna do to lower that housing cost so that we can just increase that gap between our income and our expenses so we can save more. And so there is some compromising that needs to happen here. And I don't think it's realistic for everybody to be like, well, you have to go live with like 5 roommates to save money. No, but maybe you live with one other person, or maybe you live alone, but you don't have a 1-bedroom and you switch to a studio. Housing is the first thing you want to kind of take a look at and see where you are willing to compromise. Lowering your expenses when it comes to travel. Travel is a big one. I feel like solo traveling has become more and more popular. People have always traveled alone, right? And so there are more resources out there for how to save money as a solo traveler. But I think one of the things that I found and that I obviously explored when I want to do like a solo trip by myself, I look at hostels. Hostels have changed a lot since I was in college. And thinking about ways where I can, one, lower my expenses when I'm traveling, and the hotel, the Airbnb are gonna cost more by staying there. And I have considered it. So that's like one area you can think about, like when you're traveling, how can you lower those expenses? Optimizing those different points that you can get with credit cards. I've done a YouTube video on that. So think about when you're traveling, how you can travel for less. There were some comments on one of the articles, and I was even on some Reddit groups, like reading what people were saying, and they're like, oh, well, I'm part of a couple, and like that's just because you have 2 people to split your expenses with. So it's not really like you're splitting your own expense, but you're splitting 2 people's expenses. So the next point is like, when it comes to events, when I say events, I'm really thinking about weddings. When it comes to weddings, and this is a conversation I had with Ari when we were looking at a hotel for a friend of ours who's getting married. We're like, damn, these hotels are not cheap. I know I would have still like gone to the wedding and paid for the hotel room, but just by myself, this hotel room is like $250. If I were a single person going to my friend's wedding, that cost would be just on me. And of course, this is where like the people either give you a +1 or they don't. But that's something like that I was like, well, there are a lot of instances where you're splitting costs that aren't really for 2 people, or they're meant for 2 people, but you, because you're single, have to pay it for 1. That leads us into like the events and gifts and hotel rooms for weddings to attend. And something that my friend group does a lot is we gift gifts for people's birthdays as a group. And so if you're going to a wedding, or if you're celebrating somebody's birthday, or if somebody's having a huge party and you need to bring a gift, how can you think about the people that you know that are going to the same event and say, hey, why don't we all like chip in for X, Y, and Z, so that you're splitting the cost of the gift between more than just yourself. Think about how you can do things as a group. And this is where it all ties back to like your community of people. I am a couple. Some of our other friends are a couple. There are people in our group that are not a couple. So that's not going to make us exclude the person that is single and say, you know what, you're not going to be part of this gift, or like we want to give a gift as a couple. And sometimes that's the case, but many times there's a way to get something as a larger group. And so even if you're watching this and you are not single, keep your single friends in mind, because there's a lot more that we can all be doing as a group, so that not one person is feeling like they have to put up a gift all by themselves. So that's something to think about when you're going to events, or if you're organizing an event. How can you make it so that like nobody feels like they have to get one big thing for you? The last piece, an area that we're going to talk about, is taking care of yourself, taking care of future you. So I talk about the emergency fund a lot because it is something that is important to everybody at every stage. You want to have something to back you up in case something happens. But as a single person, as someone who lives alone, you kind of have to be able to account for yourself for everything, right? And that's not to say that when you're part of a couple that you should depend on your partner. No, when you're part of a couple, yeah, you yourself should also have the emergency fund. You shouldn't be expecting especially if you're not married, you shouldn't be expecting your partner to pay for your lifestyle if you were to lose your job. The emergency fund for single individuals should be a little heftier. Your one name is put on all of the bills. Your one name is on the lease. So definitely having more than that, like 3 months emergency fund, is important here. 3 months is the minimum. Aiming for more, especially as we see that like things are a little uncertain in the economy and have been for a while. So increasing that emergency fund. The next one is disability insurance. I talk about life insurance a lot, but life insurance kicks in when we are no longer alive. Disability insurance is insurance for when you are sick, ill, disabled, and cannot work for a period of time. According to the Social Security Administration, 25% of 20-year-olds will become disabled or unable to work for a period of time before they turn 36. 25% is a big percent. And how do we protect ourselves if we are sick, if we can't go back to work, if we're disabled? This is something that your employer sometimes provides. So definitely check the benefits that your employer has. Disability insurance is probably there. There's the short term, there's long term. I feel like I was able to select both at one point, but then I also remember having to choose one or the other. So definitely look into what the benefits your employer has and see if this is one that they offer. If not, there are obviously marketplaces to be able to buy disability insurance. It's like any other insurance. So look into it, because what happens if we are sick for a period of time and unable to work? I mean, it's not going to pay us 100% of our income, but I think it is over 50% or something like that of what your income is. If you don't have a job and you don't have a job for a long time because you are physically ill and can't get a job, then you have to think about what would happen in that case. Disability insurance is important to look into. Those are kind of the 4 areas that I was thinking about in ways that people who are not part of a couple, the single ones, can maybe look to optimize the money that they have, the money that they're spending, so that they're able to save more, so that you're able to increase your net worth, that you're able to pay off your debt. I acknowledge that there's just a lot of, not even just the financial privilege of being part of a couple, but just the privilege of being able to have that other income to apply to things. So don't beat yourself up for it. You're doing great. I hope that some of this helps. If you have something that you want to share, like some way that you're doing it, please leave it in the comments. Let people know what you're doing to be able to hit your financial goals. I will see you all in the next video.